Hello, world. Welcome to the 264th Climate Change Emergency Protest here in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. It is December 13th, 2023. Next week will be the 265th Climate Change Emergency Protest. I'll probably be outside then on the battlefield. That'll be on December 21st, 2023, and that'll be number 265. This is number 264, December 13th. The Conference of Parties ended in United Arab Emirates at Abu Dhabi. That's number 28. That's the 28th of these things that they've done where the countries have gotten together to discuss climate change and fossil fuels and things like that, which they never discuss fossil fuels, even though they're supposed to discuss fossil fuels. It's never in the text at the end. They're making a big deal out of it. They're transitioning away, this is the quotes, transitioning away from fossil fuels in a just and orderly, equitable manner. Okay. They're also agreeing to net zero by 2050, meaning you put out the same amount of carbon dioxide as you sequester or whatever. Your carbon dioxide is zero. They also have global tripling of renewables by 2030. Wow, they really got to it. There's no statement about phasing down of fossil fuels, no phasing out of fossil fuels, the language at that. They actually, and they're making a big deal out of it, they mention the word fossil fuels and transitioning away from fossil fuels in a just and orderly, equitable manner. These conferences are supposed to be about fossil fuels, about climate change, things like that. The idea that it's taken 28 years to even mention fossil fuels is just demonstrates the insanity of it all. I don't know why they bother having these things, because they're a bunch of idiots. They get together, and it's always the lowest common denominator has to be the agreed to text. So if someone proposes something wonderful and the other person says, no, I only want this, you have to go with it. No, I only want this. It's the lowest denominator that everyone agrees to. And that's probably not the way to do a conference. There's way too many people there. They had 100,000 people at this conference. I have some thoughts on that in a second here. So they still believe that 1.5 degrees Celsius increase since 1880 baseline, which is another discussion, is within reach. Newsflash, we're already at 1.54 for 2023. So 1.50 is already blown through. If you use a 1750 baseline, we're at 1.9, 1.85 degrees Celsius increase since 1750, which was the true start of the industrial era. So it's the first mention of fossil fuels, as I said, in 28 COPs. 190 countries agreed to this. As I said, it's the lowest common denominator. The island nations signed on to this terrible thing that didn't actually do anything great. But they said it was business as usual. It was no promise to peak emissions by 2025. They called it virtue signaling. And a lady from Samoa called it celebrating the flowers that will lie on our graves. And the reason why they're saying that is because they're encountering sea level rise at a ridiculous rate. A lot of island nations will no longer exist in a few years. They're just disappearing because the oceans are rising so fast. So it actually applies to most of the world, though, this statement, celebrating the flowers that will lie on our graves. I mean, what a profound statement, and they're actually seeing it. But it does apply to all of us in the world. Yeah, the island nations might be going down and under, but eventually, in a not so distant future, hopefully within my lifetime if I don't croak, but I'll probably see this event happen to around the world, and we're seeing the effects of climate change right now. And the scary part is we have passed 1.5 degrees Celsius, and we are rocketing towards 2 degrees Celsius, and then all hell breaks loose at that point. The TikTok chart that I did a while ago shows, and I came up with these numbers. For every 1/10 of a degree increase, you have a doubling effect of the catastrophes, and it seems to be holding true. We'll see if it plays out. Hopefully we won't have to encounter that, but it looks like, based on this kind of stuff that they proposed and lack of proposals and lack of action, that we're going to rocket past 2. And once we hit 2, the feedback loops kick in, and we'll rocket through 2 into 3 and 4 degrees Celsius, if not higher. And at some point it becomes untenable for life on Earth to exist. And that's where we're headed. And it could be 2026, could be 2030, 2035, 2050, but chances are anyone under 45 years old will see the horrendous effects, a hellscape of climate change. sad to say. And there's no push from the younger generation at all. There's no push from the people in their 30s at all. And there's no push from the ex-hippies that were around in the 60s and the 70s to do anything about it. If you're a corporatist hippie, you're voting for the Democrats and Republicans right now. You look at what's going on. You're being fooled if you're paying attention to the three news networks and not going on YouTube and doing your own research. But whatever. These are the easy fixes we could do right now. It doesn't require a whole lot of thought process. Can get to it right away, let alone making it mandatory that governments adhere to any future agreements and things like that. But there's no teeth in all these agreements that I just mentioned. So here are the easy fixes. No subsidies to fossil fuels at all. Stop the fossil fuel subsidies. That makes it harder for them to produce gas and things like that and oil. No new production, no new drilling, no new nothing like that. No new exploration for oil. Why would you need oil if you're transitioning over to renewable resources? Makes no sense at all. No new gas stations. East of town here, they tore down a whole forest so they could put in a gas station. Ridiculous. Absolutely insane. There should be a moratorium. No more, or just in general, not even a moratorium, just stop altogether. No new gas stations. If you're switching over to electric cars, adding gas stations makes no sense at all. No dragnet scouring of the oceans. When you go fishing, these giant trawlers go in groups and they just scour everything for 10 miles. And it denudes everything. There's nothing left. No life, no nothing. And they need to end that. No dragnet scouring fishing. No single-use items such as plastics and metals. In this country, we get a lot of plastic bottles, a lot of metal stuff, and we just throw it away after one use. It's absolute insanity. More recycling centers. I don't even know where one is around here. They collect the recycling, but I think it goes straight to the dump again. So it makes you feel better. But in reality, it's just going straight to the dump as well, just in a different area of the garbage truck, or a different garbage truck. Biodegradable items. We need to start producing that. Make it out of plant-based stuff that when you throw it away, it degrades right away. It doesn't stick around. No lawn mowing. In this neighborhood that I live in, it's an Olympic event. Tanya and I have dug up our entire lawn. We don't own a lawnmower at all, and we planted shrubs and trees and things like that. So we have shade. And in the summer, it's amazing. You drive up to our house, it's baking outside or in the neighbors' houses because the sun's beating it on so hard. And our house is literally 10 degrees cooler than anyone else around. You can feel it. And if everyone did this in the neighborhood, we'd be in good shape as far as climate change goes for a while. Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, the town about a mile and a half from here, they're not setting up. They're not getting ready for climate change at all. There's no hardening. There's no cooling zones or centers, no warming centers, because climate change also involves cooling. It's cold events, whereas you get a weakening jet stream and you get these waves going, and these Rossby waves. And what's happening is warm air is pushing up into the Arctic, also pushing down cold air from the Arctic, as well as stratosphere. You get these stratospheric events, and you get these outbreaks that come down and are actually life-threatening. You can end up with blizzards and things like that in the middle of a climate change situation that we have right now. So people don't understand that. They'll go, oh, where's your climate change? Well, that is part of it. And I'm going to do a video on that hopefully next week or the following week. So no lawn mowing. Any contracts that are agreed to, such as at these conferences, they have to be legally binding. There has to be some sort of penalty if they don't follow through on it. Negotiations, not war. Okay, we have a State Department in this country. It's a State Department. They're supposed to be the chief diplomats. There's no diplomacy involved at all. In fact, what they did is they just sent $100 million of weapons over to Israel to slaughter more Gazans, okay? This is a genocide that's going on right there. And it's an open-air prison. It's slaughter, wholesale slaughter. They can say they're going after Hamas, but they're just blowing up entire blocks and everything. It's a scouring of Gaza, the whole northern part of Gaza, all the way up to the Israeli border. Well, the whole thing's on the Israeli border. But they're scouring. It's a straight-up genocide. It's a crimes against humanity. It's a war crime that's happening. The United States is an extreme part of that right now, and I think some of the top politicians are freaking out, even though they should have freaked out before this was even happening. I called it back in my video out at the Peace Light. If you look at it, when the first attack happened by Hamas, I said the Israelis are going to commit giant atrocities on the people of Gaza and take it out on them. An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Leaves everyone blind and gumming their food. So the next wars, okay, no, you got to negotiate, not war. Okay, that's the way it is. You got to see what the problem is here. Maybe have an arbiter. Okay, maybe the United Nations needs to be the arbiter in situations like that rather than war. So the next wars, and this is my proposal. This sounds insane to say this. The next war has to be nuclear wars. If you're going to have a war with someone, let's get at it and do the nuclear bombs. Okay, just whip the bombs out at each other and end it all. That would stop these wars. People wouldn't want to have nuclear wars at all, and that would stop the idea that wars are going to keep on. It's a mutual assured destruction, and nobody wins in a nuclear war. That's why we need to have a rule that the next war that breaks out has to be a nuclear one. That will stop everything. Sounds crazy to say that, but it is a thought. I say nuclear wars. Let's see, all COPs will be at, oh yeah, all the next conference of parties, the number 29, needs to either be in Bonn, Germany or New York City. These are the UN headquarters and nowhere else. This idea that this last one was at the United Arab Emirates, they're an oil producer. The head of the whole thing was the head of the ADNOC, which is Abu Dhabi National Oil Company. It's the 8th largest oil company in the world. He's the president of that, and he was in charge of this COP session. Of course they're not going to get anywhere. He's going to give a song and dance and act like he's doing something, but in reality, the Saudi Arabians get involved and everyone else. They don't want to go forward with stopping climate change. This last COP also had 2,000 attendees that were just lobbyists. Okay, from now on, these COPs that should be in Bonn, Germany, or New York City need to have 2,000 participants altogether. So each country can send what, 10 representatives, and at least one of them has to be one that can make decisions that are binding with their country and their government when they make the decisions what to do. All right, so you can't have a bunch of people like John Kerry going for the United States. Has no power. No one, half the people don't respect him. The other half think it's foolish to have him going. So it was insane to have John Kerry as a representative. It didn't have, no one in the government was there as far as representing and being there for the negotiations. No one with any teeth. So that's my solutions for things, and I will catch you next week for number 265. These climate change talks that I have, these protests, should have stopped at number 1. The world should have been on par and going full speed by then, and realizing that we need to get a hold of this climate change issue. We have literally pushed ourselves into a zone that we may never get out of. It might very well, I suspect, get worse and worse and worse. If we keep on this path, it's not going to get any better. So we need to do our best to get off this path, at least give someone somewhere in some future thing a chance of survival. I'll catch you next week. That'll be on December 21st.